In today's video, we are going to look at how much Bitcoin do I need to retire, or put differently, how much Bitcoin collateral value is needed to support my lifestyle over a 20-year period. Now, as always, this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We are just geeks on the internet. So if you are thinking about retiring on your Bitcoin, we do encourage you to reach out to the professionals, get professional support. This model is really meant to just show hypothetical values and data based on your inputs. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So in the first input here, we're going to have monthly expenses. Basically, what is your amount of monthly expenses you have to support your lifestyle? For this example, I'm going to go ahead and say $10,000. You'll see here that the annualized amount populates automatically. For loan APR, this is basically saying what is the interest rate you are going to pay to borrow that amount of money. So we're going to go ahead and say 10%. And then what are your year-over-year expense increases? This could be because you have a growing amount of expenses due to activities and expenses within your life, or just simply because of inflation. Either way, we're going to go ahead and say 5%. Last but not least, we have to set the Bitcoin compound annual growth rate projection for this term. I'm going to go ahead and say Saylor bear case 21%. So the first output we'll see here is a chart, and you'll see there's a couple of different colors here. We have one based on borrowing at 30% loan to value, or LTV, and we have another based on 50% loan to value. Now the reason why these are different is because if you are borrowing only 30% of the value of your Bitcoin, well, then you're going to need more Bitcoin in order to obtain the funds to support your lifestyle. Conversely, if you are borrowing 50% of the value of your Bitcoin in the form of a loan, you are going to require less total Bitcoin to arrive at the same amount of money needed to fund your lifestyle. Now, obviously, different loan to value ratios come with different risk profiles. So it's important that you research those and understand what that means before you make any decisions. The dynamic summary here is going to give you kind of a TLDR synthesis of what you're looking at and kind of call it out in a quick summary. I encourage you to read that. And then the bottom here is really going to show all the metrics. So let's go through this really quickly. You can see in year one, the Bitcoin market price is what it is currently. Our expenses are what we keyed in annually, right? $10,000 per month, $120,000 per year. Interest paid, that's going to be the 10%. So the total amount of money we need is $132,000. And you can see here the total loan is still at $132,000, but as this goes down into subsequent years, these numbers are being aggregated together because we're continuously pulling the same amount of money, or the increasing amount of living expenses per year, and that's going to be stacking and really driving how much Bitcoin value is needed in each of these different loan scenarios. So in year one, in order to get $132,000 at a 30% LTV, we need to have $440,000 in Bitcoin collateral, and that's a total of 4.19 Bitcoin. Similarly, for the 50% LTV loan, we need to have $264,000 in Bitcoin collateral, which is 2.51 Bitcoin. But if you jump down here to year number 2, now we've got Bitcoin's growth, we've got our expense growth, we've got the same 10% interest. Our yearly loan has now gone up to $138,600, but we're going to be pulling that on top of the prior year's loan. So the total loan amount needed is now $270,000, $270,600. And in order to get a 30% LTV loan against that value, we need $902,000 worth of Bitcoin collateral. Now you can see all of a sudden this jumps up from 4.19 Bitcoin in year one to over 7 Bitcoin in year 2. Well, why is that? Well, because Bitcoin's price is appreciating at only 21% compound growth annually, but we're only borrowing 30% of the value, right? And so that's why in order to continue getting the same amount of money each year, well, the amount of Bitcoin needed is going to go up. Similarly, with the 50% LTV loan, we need $541,000 total Bitcoin value, which is 4.26 Bitcoin. But you can see here in year 6, right, when the Bitcoin value based on our projected growth rate is close to $275,000, we need a total amount of money that year of about $170,000, bringing our total loan amount to just under $900,000, which is $2.99 million in Bitcoin value required. Okay. And then you can see here, as we go forward and as we continue seeing that 21% compound growth on our Bitcoin stack, the amount needed to continue funding our lifestyle in each subsequent year is going down. And that's why that's reflected this way in this chart. Because once the compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin has surpassed the delta from our 30% or 50% LTV against our total Bitcoin value, all of a sudden the amount needed in these subsequent years goes down because the growth rate of our underlying Bitcoin stack has now surpassed the total amount of money that we need to borrow that year, therefore requiring less and less Bitcoin each year to continue funding our lifestyle based on our monthly expenses and the growth in our monthly expenses. So the way to think about this really is, well, do I have enough to retire in year 1? And if so, well, okay, how am I stacking the additional amount needed that I'm gonna require in this strategy to ultimately max out in whatever this year is, whether it's year 6 or 7 or 5. And in this particular example, the maximum amount of Bitcoin required to support this particular lifestyle based on this particular compound annual growth rate for Bitcoin is just under 11 at a 30% LTV loan and just over 6.5 at a 50% LTV loan. But this is very dynamic, so if you are borrowing at higher interest rates, these numbers are going to change. If you have a more bullish projection for Bitcoin's growth, obviously these things are going to change. So I encourage anybody who's interested in this scenario and interested in modeling this data, play around, model different metrics, model different scenarios. If you have suggestions on how we can make this better, please let us know. If you have questions or you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to provide guidance as we can, or if you have suggestions again on how we can make this better, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for your support. Much appreciated, and we'll see you on the next one.